that, we have the Innovation in Companion Animal panel, where Hillary will be leading, again, a group of experts and industry insiders and talk about the drivers of growth, focusing on wellness, preventative care, and of course, AI machine learning.
So what we wanted to talk about today is the huge growth potential and the rapid change in companion animal diagnostics. And so much of that is due to changes in technology and having data that we haven't had access to before. I'll introduce myself and then have our panelists introduce themselves. I'm Hillary Jensen. I Stanford undergrad, Harvard MBA, software executive who, with experience at Google and companies like LoopNet, and decided to try to help my dog live a longer, happier, healthier life. So founded Obi, Digital Dog Wellness, out of love for him. And he's passed away since then, but lives on in spirit in the company. And we are shipping, and well, actually we're out of inventory now. We are live on Amazon, Chewy, and obidog.com. And the reason we fit into the companion animal diagnostics conversation is that we measure and monitor eating and drinking habits, and we're using AI and machine learning to help with predictive diagnostics that can help with early diagnosis of health problems. So that's my spiel. And I look forward to hearing from our other panelists. Janine from Kinship had a family emergency. Everything's okay, but she was not able to join us. So sorry about that. Aaron, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Hillary. It's really great to be here, both as a emergency veterinarian as well as an entrepreneur and co-founder. So my journey in vet med began in high school, where I started out. My first job in a veterinary hospital was being the janitor in a small clinic in Pennsylvania. And then it took like a 15-year journey of rural veterinary medicine as a technician to large specialty and emergency hospitals, and worked my way through several different roles as a technician there, and really fell in love with emergency medicine and found myself really on the admin side of things. Went back to grad school, got a degree in toxicology, and then was fortunate enough to get accepted to Colorado State's combined MBA DVM program, where we'd go to vet school all day and then walk across campus and go to business school at night. Where, in that cohort, we founded Lacuna Diagnostics, which has been a very exciting journey for the past 4 years. Lacuna is a B2B business. We've digitized the microscope just like radiology digitized the X-ray plate about 15 years ago. So traditionally, a doctor, a veterinarian needs to send a microscope slide out to a laboratory. It's a box it up and ship it, or a courier picks it up and sends it to a lab. It's a 1 to 5 day turnaround time on average across the country. By us digitizing the microscope at a point of care solution in the hospital and uploading it to a team of pathologists around the globe. I took a look this morning on our stat service, which we call Right Meow. We're averaging 9-minute turnaround time, and on our high priority, we're averaging 53 minutes. So really the problem we solve is, one, we believe that time is trauma. So being able to diagnose accurately and getting treatment started is obviously better for the pet. I can't think of one reason as a veterinarian why that wouldn't be better. And then two, for the pet parents, we never want to be a Friday on a 4th of July weekend and say, hey, your dog might have an infection or it might have cancer. I'll tell you in 5 days, and then we'll get something going. So really a pleasure to be here, guys. I'll throw my email into the chat channel in case I can answer any questions afterwards.
And mute. Holly, do you mind introducing yourself?
Happy to. Hi, I'm Holly Gans, and I am a microbial ecologist. I co-founded Animal Biome, which is a startup focusing on the gut health and now actually oral health of cats and dogs. I did my PhD at UC Davis studying host microbe interactions, and then postdoc at UC Berkeley, where I worked on wildlife disease ecology and became introduced into the sequencing methods used to sequence the microbiome with collaborators at the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. I decided after my postdoc that I wanted to try and apply microbiome research to companion animals, and took a research appointment at the UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine. And then ultimately ended up working at the Genome Center at UC Davis, where I started a citizen science project with Jonathan Eisen called Kitty Biome, where we basically just asked people through a Kickstarter campaign if they were willing to support us to cover our sequencing costs. Didn't cover salaries or anything like that, but to just explore what the microbiome looked like in cats and how it varied in disease states. The reason I went to Kickstarter was because at that point it was very challenging to get any research funding for microbiome research for companion animals. What I discovered was that there was a whole community of people who had felt trapped on sort of a medical merry-go-round of antibiotics, steroids, and prescription diets, and they had refractory cases. So they were looking for something new and willing to spend their own money on microbiome research, even though we said we couldn't promise that anything useful would come out of that project. What I discovered, though, was that in these cats with chronic diarrhea, chronic vomiting, and chronic constipation, that there were biomarkers in the microbiome that I thought might be useful for creating new diagnostics that were less invasive based on fecal samples to replace the sort of standard practice in veterinary medicine for things like IBD, which requires invasive biopsy sampling, which many general practitioners will not bother with because it costs, $1,000 or more and often doesn't alter care.
That's great. Thank you. And then Jamie, are you still, I don't see you right now, but Jamie from Covetrus?
Hi, Hillary. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
What an interesting opportunity here. It's like Hollywood Squares times 1,000. It's really great. Thank you, everyone. It's so great to see you. My name is Jamie Carroll. This is my 25th year in animal health now. Hard to believe that. I started out with the intention of becoming a dairy vet, and then I spent some time with a dairy vet, and I thought, well, this is absolute madness, and changed my course at that point in time. But I landed the beginning of my career at IDEX Laboratories, where I spent 15 years. Started out in research and development, primarily on the poultry and livestock side, and then held a number of commercial and general management roles, including the general manager of the telemedicine division for a number of years. I then went to join a company called LifeLearn outside Toronto, up in Ontario, and spent 6 years there, serving 4 of those years as the CEO. During that time, we had a project with IBM Watson, and as a result, spent about 1.5 years on the board of advisors for IBM Watson, where we were trying to solve pretty significant challenges around how we use massive amounts of data, often that data being highly unstructured, to solve some pretty big challenges across retail, human medical and veterinary medical, a number of different areas. And then left LifeLearn to join, at the time was Vet's First Choice, and now has become Covetrus. And so I'm now about 3.5 years with Covetrus. I serve in the role of head of global supplier relations. And of course, I'm also very grateful to be a member of the board of advisors for the Digital Animal Summit and a member of the Leader Circle. So very happy to be here to see everybody. Real quick on Covetrus. We're a publicly traded company, which is the result of a merger between Vet's First Choice and Henry Schein Animal Health, which happened back in February 2019. Our core business units include distribution, prescription management, data and insights, and software development. And we operate globally in about 25 countries, serving around 100,000 customers today. Diagnostics play a key role, obviously, in the operations of a veterinary hospital, and Covetrus is a trusted distribution partner for key suppliers, but we also play a significant role in the interaction of practice management data and in-practice diagnostic equipment. We also provide data services to reference laboratory networks, and ultimately we look to help veterinarians solve the issues of gaps in care, where we can identify patients that are not protected against preventable disease and help veterinarians manage therapies that are specific to the individual patient. As a result, we serve not only veterinary practitioners, but also their pet owning clients. So that's it about myself and Covetrus.
Great, thanks. And we wanted to start with the background because we didn't want to assume that you knew all the players, and now you understand how we all fit in together. So starting off with the discussion around the history of where we were yesterday and how we are evolving to today, then we'll get to the future in a bit. But can you tell us a bit about how diagnostics, companion animal diagnostics, used to be, and some of the problems that are now being addressed?
Who's that directed to, Hillary?
It's been directed to either of the three of you, but go ahead, Jamie, if you'd like.
Okay, so I have to peel way back in history because I feel like it's been a long time since I was at IDEX. But I think early on, when we think about the history of diagnostics, I remember when pet-side rapid assays were a new novel invention, and IDEX went from creating the SNAP test actually started out with something called SITE, which was a little barrel test using an enzyme like the immunosorbent assay approach, and that evolved into a self-contained reagent diagnostic called the SNAP test, and that was a really new novel approach. And it's interesting now because millions and millions of those tests are made on a monthly basis, and there are different other types of suppliers for those types of pet-side diagnostics today. But how did veterinarians get their work done back then? Well, it was still a matter of, from my perspective, the issue was always around how to drive compliance with diagnostics and compliance with medications. And veterinarians always struggled with this because if you think about the typical veterinary hospital in the companion animal sense, you're talking about a practice that's a small business. They don't have a digital marketing expert down the hallway. They don't have an oncologist down the hallway. And they're oftentimes are general practitioners. Yet they have patients that come in that, number one, don't speak. So they can't tell you where they hurt or what's wrong. And two, they could have anything from a cat or a dog or an iguana or a parrot or a horse as part of their clientele. So having to have knowledge of all those different types of species, the relative diagnostics that are required for those species based on the condition they're presenting with was a real challenge, and it's still a challenge today. The difference today is that we have more advanced diagnostics and we have better access to information to make good clinical decisions. So there's been a tremendous amount of evolution. And I think we'll continue to see this. There's also different types of technologies that are really interesting, and Aaron at Laguna Diagnostics probably has some good familiarity with this, I'm guessing. But I remember when PCR tests were like a multiple day event to get a result. And now we've got almost what's called real-time PCR diagnostics that are available, where you actually get very definitive, highly specific and sensitive results in a matter of hours instead of days. So incredible innovation. And I think we'll continue to see that moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo that a little bit, I think we overlook the ecosystem of how veterinarians actually work. I mean, we talk in the business world all the time about speed and accuracy, but I mean, really, when you dial down to what they teach us in medical school, they're basically saying, okay, what are your medical problems that you have with your animal? How do you lump those medical problems together? Then what are your differential diagnoses for those medical problems? And then you rank those based on the history, based on regionality, based on everything. And the key point to figuring out what it is from those list of differentials is diagnostics. I mean, that's how we rule things out, and that's how we diagnose things. So if we think about that landscape or that ecosystem of how veterinarians get their work done, and then we put it into, 15 years ago, 20 years ago versus today, dog comes in limp. This is a personal example from 2 weeks ago. Dog comes in limping, took some radiographs, didn't see any fracture, didn't see any concerns, thought it was probably a soft tissue injury, explained it to the owner. Radiologist gets a hold of those radiographs, and guess what? There's a hairline fracture and a humerus. Well, 15 years ago, that radiologist would not have had access to those x-rays. Therefore, that pet would have went forward with 3 experienced emergency doctors not seeing this fracture in the humerus, where today that's rare for that to be missed, you know, because it might get delayed. I mean, it was a 2-hour delay and the owners were very happy for us to bring this to light. But I bring this personal experience here to just say, like, the history of the where we were, of how we got our things done was, you know, the clinical intuition and empirically ruling things out was probably more a part of a veterinarian's career 15 years ago, where now, I mean, I had an animal the other night, I probably ran 10 diagnostics on, 5 of which didn't exist 10 years ago. So to Jamie's point, you know, it's not all about being better. It's just about having more options to get there to a more defined result faster, I think.
Hillary, can't hear you.
You're on mute.
Thank you. Holly, I know we've already addressed a lot of the reason you have founded your company, which is the GI problems that so many animals have. And my Weiler DJ was certainly one of them. I'd like to transition to the future now and the problems that you're solving today. And then what do we think in the next 5 to 10 years? How will the diagnostics market change?
So, well, from the point of view of gut health, I think it's already changing in veterinary medicine as well as in diagnostic tools. In the past, I think there was this focus on inflammation, and now they're moving towards sort of chronic enteropathies, which probably Aaron could fill us in more on that whole process. It's really, I think, a much better approach where they go through a sort of series of stages of trying to understand what's happening. But from the point of view of diagnostic tools, we're finding tremendous value in microbiome testing. I think there's also metabolites that are useful in addition to just what microbes are there, what are they doing. What we can also detect things like intestinal cells, and I mean there's all kinds of things in fecal samples that can be used to try and get at things in a less invasive way. There are now cameras that you can put through the GI tract if you want to take pictures for inflammation. They're still a little bit big, I think, for cats and dogs, but they're coming for humans. I think at-home testing is very much something that people want. I mean, we just launched oral health testing, and I can tell you for cats, like having them to have to go into the veterinarian's office to get seen for an oral exam is stressful for many of them. Of course, getting a sample of their from their mouth can be challenging for pet parents as well. But I think that there's definitely tremendous demand from consumers for more at-home testing.
And I think that rolls into a question that Dean Larimore asked, which is the new data that we are able to have access to. Can we talk to the role of data science in the future of diagnostics?
Yeah, I'm sure just like Obi, Animal Biome has been investing quite a lot in building a database and collecting our data in a really good way, so that part of what we're doing is really amassing data, and the better job we do of it, the more useful it will be for things like the sort of AI that Dean Larimore is referring to. And it's really easy to not collect data properly or to store it properly. So there's data science is really foundational behind, I think, all of the companies that are really focusing on trying to build diagnostics. I'm sure Lacuna is doing some similar work. I don't know if you want to jump in on that, Aaron.
I mean, I bring these ideas to the engineers and they're like, Aaron, it is not that simple. I'm like, well, how can it not be that simple? I mean, you've got this dog, you've got this history, you've got these diagnostics, like, but you're right, Holly, it's, the worst thing could be you go back and look at that data when you need it and it's not organized and it's not segmented appropriately, because then it's worthless, because you can't, you either can't go back or it's going to cost so much money to go back and resources to go back that it'd probably be better to start over. So yeah, I think that's a great point. I think a lot of people are working on this. I think there's a lot of cool companies working on the data side thing, everything from like personalized precision medicine, Holly, to, what we're trying to do. And I think it's extremely exciting because I think that data often isn't talked about enough as maybe one of the solutions to some of the other problems we have in vet med. I mean, look at what's going on right now. The essential workers we're getting run over. and for all good reasons, and we're happy to be there. But, you know, I fast forward 10 years and I think, you know, how could data being collected today help us be faster and more efficient in the clinics? You know, it takes time to go through complicated blood work, and it takes time to go through complicated microscope slides. But if we're working on data correctly, which I hope a lot of us are, I think a lot of us are, what is that going to assist the veterinarian and assist the clinician and the clinical team to getting to a better and faster treatment plan for animals? So I agree. I think it's really important.
I just want to give one example from our work. So we've been working really hard to clean our data and build a really nice data warehouse over the past year. And then we've been surfacing insights. We submitted abstracts to ACVIM and AVMA this year that were both accepted, but then both conferences have now been canceled. So we're looking to publishing the work, but just starting with like, what is healthy in the microbiome for cats and dogs? Like, this is a controversial topic for human medicine, but we actually have the data to show that we can define healthy for cats and dogs. And then we can show how like things like Escherichia levels actually can be predictive of clinical signs for these gut cases. Highly significant. The best p-values I've ever had, like p to the, anyway, it's like 0.0 to the -12. And those are just the most obvious low-hanging fruit that you can start to pick up when you have your data in order. And we're looking to find more less obvious insights that we'll be able to, as our data set grows, surface.
I think it's a really interesting conversation here, because the challenge of data is so broad and so deep. And I'm looking through some of the group chat notes here, and I just want to highlight something that Linda has brought up. And Linda, you're exactly right. In veterinary medicine, there is no data standardization across the different practice management software systems. And I think the landscape, I might be wrong on this, but I think there's approximately 26 different brands of practice management software just in companion animal health alone. And then there's more for equine specific hospitals. And if you look at just the North American market, there's somewhere around maybe 40% of hospitals are on the most current version of that particular type of software. So if you think about the lack of standardization, the broad variety of different types of software systems that are out there, and the lack of compliance with upgrading to the most current version of the software, you have it's a storm. It's a perfect storm of challenges with data and being able to understand in aggregate what's happening in the industry. So then you have companies like Covetrus and others that have started to dig into this challenge and really think about how do we normalize data at scale, of course with veterinary permission, to be able to look at insights into gaps in care and identify those on behalf of the veterinarian. And this is a core mission of companies like Covetrus, where we're trying to identify ways using technologies like cognitive computing to help normalize data at scale in a highly accurate manner, so that we can help veterinarians understand, even within their own hospital, how many non-protected patients do they have for preventable disease? How many patients do they have that are coming up as lapsed on critical medications? And to help the pet parents stay current on those core medications, to stay current on their diagnostics. But today, if you look across even just the software systems that Covetrus owns, a lot of these fields for diagnostic codes and product codes are freeform in many ways. So now you have the additional problem of trying to normalize, basically open text type coding when you've got something like 15 to 20% turnover at the front desk area of any veterinary hospital too. So there's lack of standardization everywhere you look. It's a huge challenge, and but with technologies like cognitive computing, we'll make rapid progress here. And then eventually it would be amazing. You could foresee a future in which, by amassing that information at scale, you might even be able to predict early on disease outbreaks by region. You might be able to even identify, as diagnostic codes are entered in for ehrlichiosis or Lyme disease in rural Michigan, you might be able to send out almost like an alert system to the veterinary hospitals to say, we're seeing an outbreak in this area of this particular disease, and How amazing would that be to be able to be proactive in outbreak scenarios? That's part of our future. We have to get there.
I think with with human medicine and the COVID crisis, they're finding that it's revealing all these problems with the way that the medical systems, the data is entered for in hospitals, and that it's basically, people are saying that they're designed more for billing and that kind of tracking than it is for surfacing these kinds of insights. How do you think it compares for veterinary medicine?
Is that to me, Holly?
Yeah, I guess.
It's a good question. I mean, when you think of billing, I don't really know, actually. I wouldn't have the expertise on the billing code side of it, to be honest with you, and how that works in the different practice management software systems. But I think there's evidence of that being useful in other medical industries.
I'm going to interject a little bit. And so I think we have about 7 minutes or so left, and I would love to have some more conversation around how the existing COVID virus and pandemic has affected us, and then also allow for questions from the audience, if that's okay. Can you speak to the three of you? Like, for me, I've observed there was a reticence, I think, in acceptance of telemedicine for veterinarians. And I know that we have some of our advocates on there, and especially Roland Tripp. And so that seems to be accelerated from a consumer standpoint, which I think is a really positive thing, considering how many companion animals do not like going to the vet. Any other thoughts there, or Holly or Aaron?
Sure. I'll try and be quick. So the vet, we work both through the veterinary channel as well as direct to consumer, and a lot of the veterinarians we're talking to have had a reduction in their business, something on the order of 75%. They're focusing on emergency cases. We're trying to sort of let them know that we can provide them with some opportunities for doing, in-home testing and sort of microbiome restoration through capsules that can be sent by mail. But it's a big transition. We, like a year ago, did play with some of the telemedicine platforms and found that a lot of our customers, when we work directly with consumer, are older, and they found downloading the apps challenging. So I think, but the veterinarians are trying to, I think, really focus a lot on telemedicine, but it is a big transition, just like teachers found it to be.
I think that it's a great opportunity just to quickly say that I think we're very fortunate that our profession did the legwork for a few years before this happened. And kudos to all those people out there. I know some of them are on here, but I can't imagine the difference that we would have right now in our care if there hadn't been the legwork for telemedicine and vet med for the past 3 or 4 years. So I've seen that. I've had clients, I've had veterinarians refer to me on emergency from a telemedicine platform, and those animals were well served. So kudos to them.
Great. Can I open it up? Thank you very much. Can I open it up to questions to the group? For some reason, my screen has gone small, so I'm having a hard time reading the chat. If someone has a question that we'd like to ask specifically of one of the panelists. Nope.
There was one comment that I thought I'd just point out that Linda Rose wrote about with the clinical trial setup don't allow any open field data collection. Yeah, because people write in stuff that's useless. We had that learning as well. If you can really minimize open fields, because basically it's unusable data. It's just too labor intensive to go through that.
To speak to the human big data problem, just had a call this morning with a company on the East Coast that is a human med company that is actually looking for us to use our platform to help with some of the big data for COVID. And I think this is really interesting because it's not that we're special, it's just that their organizations are so big and their data is so robust, they're just asking someone to dumb it down and start from scratch. which I think is, just another tribute to startups and scale-ups being way more nimble than larger companies. So there is opportunity out there for companies to help with the data and all these problems of there not being codes and there not being organization, because when you extract it out into a smaller organization, you can start with clean data.
Yeah, and we owe it to the animal health industry to really learn from the progress that has been made on the human health side. That there are like companies like Athena Health in Cambridge, Mass, identified this issue years and years ago, and the difference being instead of 26 practice management software systems, there's something like 1,300 EMR systems in human health, and again, no standardization really. I mean, there's an opportunity here where we can learn from these kinds of companies that have solved this challenge at scale. Where you have not only between general practitioners like we see in animal health industry, but also how we interact with data transfer between specialists and general practitioners, and how we can ensure that ease of transfer of diagnostic and clinical information so that there are fewer gaps and there are fewer errors. I always think about when I go see my doctor and the first thing they give you is a clipboard, right? And my handwriting is horrible, so I'll fill out the clipboard and I'll see my GP, and he might say, well, you don't need to see me, you need to see a cardiologist because I hear a heart murmur. You go see your cardiologist, the first thing that gives you a clipboard, and it's a different EMR system, and those systems don't talk to each other. And there's 4 instances of any one of us in the medical in the medical community. So, and they're all wrong, by the way. So it's an issue.
I'll play Judy Woodruff, and so in the last 2 minutes, can each of you tell us what we will know about our companion animals that we don't know now in the next 10 years, and then we can wrap up.
I'll go. I think that we've touched on a lot of this stuff. So in 10 seconds or less, along those lines, I think preventative medicine, nutrition, personalized medicine, or precision medicine are going to give us the idea of disease processes and be more preventative than we've ever thought. And I do think that we will see healthier pets for longer and a longer life expectancy in our pets just by being able to know that information, which to me I feel very fortunate to be a veterinarian at this time because of that.
I would add that I think there's some interesting opportunities with wearable technology, which I think is still evolving. But there are technologies out there that can now determine changes in gait or changes in animal posture that might indicate areas of pain or discomfort. And I think that's a huge learning opportunity as well.
Yeah, and on that note, I think also, of course, the microbiome can provide early warning signs of changes that may be associated with aging or the developing of various health conditions.
Great, thanks. I will wrap up now so we can end a little early, and thank you all for the discussion. I look forward to more in the future.
Thanks, everybody. Great to see you.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.